EA and FIFA have created one of the most successful sports franchises of all time. For nearly 30 years, they have graced us with a FIFA game every single year. Now, that partnership is coming to an end. With over 300 million copies sold, commentary available in almost 20 different languages, more than 20 games in the main series, and multiple spin-off titles from FIFA Street, World Cup and Euros, the franchise and the partnership between EA and FIFA is coming to an end with the release of FIFA 23. It'll be the last game released under this partnership this year. While on the surface, these two companies were riding high on the success of the franchise, behind the scenes, trouble was brewing, and this is what led to the end of the partnership. Now the question remains, where do these two companies go? What does the future hold for the sports genre? And how did they even come together in the first place? Well, let's find out.
To see how these two companies came together, we have to go all the way back to 1988 and how FIFA first entered the sports video game market with American football title John Madden Football. After this, they would release golf and ice hockey games. But while these titles were successful in America, they weren't so successful in Europe. After doing a bit of research, EA found that a football game, which was one of the most popular sports in that area, would connect more with European audiences than any of the American titles. So after giving the go-ahead, a team of 10 developers at EA's Canadian studios began working on their first ever football game, titled EA Soccer, for the Sega Mega Drive. With a budget of around $50,000 to $100,000, and while the team was confident, EA themselves weren't that confident about the title. So in order to differentiate themselves from their competitors, EA was looking for a way to create great establishment with their football title. This is where FIFA comes in. That year in 1993, the FIFA World Cup was going to be held in the USA. FIFA wanted to use that as a launching point for their football game. But someone else has already gotten the rights to that title. So their next best option was FIFA themselves. EA targeted FIFA after seeing that they could maybe get an agreement done with FIFA that would have minuscule royalty payments involved in it. So, after some negotiation, EA and FIFA would agree to a 5-year deal that would have minuscule royalty payments for the football's governing body. And the reason that they couldn't ask for so much money was because FIFA didn't own the rights to any of the teams, names, logos, players, likenesses, or even stadiums. Which is why EA was able to get this license for such a cheap price. This would become an issue much later on. On December 15th, 1993, EA would release the first ever FIFA game called FIFA International Soccer for the Mega Drive. This was a monumental game, as it was the first game to have the FIFA licensing on. But unlike the FIFA we know today, with its upright graphics, player likenesses, and stadiums, this isn't the FIFA that was then. Back then, they didn't have any real player names. No of the players looked like anyone else, and they only had national teams, and many of the rules weren't even properly implemented. But the game was a success, especially in the UK, where it reached number 1 in the UK charts and stayed there for a full 6 months, becoming the best home-selling video game in the UK in 1993. This success would lead it to be ported to many consoles after its release. EA knew that they had something, and immediately got ready to release a sequel. The very next year, EA would release FIFA Soccer 95, and this would become a trend that would follow not only EA's mindset of creating sports games, but the mindset of how yearly titles would be released in the industry from then on, as FIFA would be the first company to release a yearly title under this name, and would continue this trend from the very release of FIFA 95 all the way until today with FIFA 23. It will also continue another trend with the title being named after a year, something that many companies would follow after suit. FIFA will continue to release a yearly FIFA game for the next 30 years. And sometimes in those titles and in those years, they would have spin-off titles like FIFA Street, which became quite a fan favorite. They would have management titles. They would target the World Cup. They would target Euros. And this became kind of the success of FIFA. Every year, you could look forward to a FIFA game. Every year, it would include new graphics, new modes, new players, and new gameplay. FIFA was able to consistently change throughout its years as a franchise, and that's all because of the dedication and hard work placed by EA. FIFA 96 would be the first game to use 3D graphics, real player names, accurate positions and rankings, and even had customization tools. This would become kind of the foothold of the franchise. FIFA 96 would include the game's first official soundtrack, which would also become a staple of the series. FIFA 06 introduced a new game mode called Be a Pro. FIFA 12 was one of the most successful in the franchise. FIFA 17 we saw the use of the Frostbite engine for the first time, and it even introduced a story mode called The Journey. And FIFA 19 would probably be the biggest change at the moment, with the introduction of the UEFA Champions League, the Europa League, and even the Super Cup for the first time in the series, something which was held exclusively by Konami's PES series for a really long time. This constant release of yearly games, the constant change, and the constant improvement over those years, those many titles, is something that would make EA a leader in the sports gaming genre. Because of this, many people would follow how they release their titles, and would have the team always working to constantly improve when it came to graphics, gameplay, modes, and players. Because of this, EA was able to create a huge market share and a foothold within the gaming industry that no one had ever seen before. A game that is localized in 18 different languages and has been ported to nearly every console ever released. But while we talk about the success of FIFA, there is one thing that many people know when it comes to FIFA. Something that many people hate, and that is Ultimate Team. Probably the biggest addition to the franchise of FIFA was Ultimate Team. It changed the franchise forever, and FIFA 09 would be the title that would have that modicum of change. First off, FIFA 09 was a pretty okay title. I really liked it. I didn't think it was the best, but I enjoyed it a lot. But it wouldn't be FIFA 09 that changed, but the mode that it got introduced to it much later. For many fans, Ultimate Team is regarded as the death of FIFA. And on March 19, 2009, it is exactly on that day that EA would launch FIFA Ultimate Team as DLC for the PS3 and the Xbox 360. It would cost you $10 to create what exactly the name says, your Ultimate Team. And while many nowadays laud Ultimate Team as the downfall of FIFA, back then no one knew what this would actually lead to. And this wasn't the first time that EA had even used Ultimate Team. They'd actually done it in a previous game called UEFA Champions League 06-07. Now while I personally haven't played that game, from what I've seen, it's kind of what we would get in FIFA 09 with Ultimate Team. But what is Ultimate Team? Well, for the uninitiated, Ultimate Team lets users create their Ultimate Team by putting players from the past, present together in one team and making one of the most powerful teams that you could do so. Take this team, go online and play against other players. You could put any player from any team, from any league, from any year together and make your dream team. But how do you get players? Well, that is where the card packs would come in. Or while we know them as today, loot boxes. These card packs came in 3 different types. Gold, the highest tier, silver, the mid tier, and bronze, the lower tier. When you open these card packs, you get a variety of players from different leagues and positions that you could put into your team. You would also get contracts, manager stuff, various things like this. And you could make your team like this. Now, I'm not going to be the first to tell you that I'm not the biggest fan of Ultimate Team. Many people hate Ultimate Team. They think it's the downfall of the franchise. So, you take these cards, you build your dream team, you take them online and battle against other players. How did you get these card packs? Well, you had to earn coins. And the way you earn coins was to play matches. Take your team out, play these matches. If you win, you get coins. If you lose, you get some coins. Then you use your coins and you buy a pack. Now, of course, gold was usually the most expensive to buy. There would be other special packs they released over the years, but gold was usually the most expensive and the easiest way to get some really good players. Now, of course, if you wanted the best players, you'd have to fork out a little bit extra coins to get that pack that might have a very rare player on your side. But one of the easiest ways to get coins was to use real money. And this has been the big controversy for Ultimate Team. Allowing players to build their dream teams, take them online and play it against other players, enticed more than 1 million people to take the dip and ultimately crash the service on launch day for Ultimate Team. EA knew that they had something. EA knew they had their money maker for the franchise. The very next year, FIFA 10 would come out, and it would also have an Ultimate Team DLC. Kind of the same thing. FIFA Ultimate Team 11 would be made free to play to attract even more players. And FIFA 12 would enter a new era for Ultimate Team by actually having it included in the game. By Ultimate Team 14, more than 20 million people was playing this mode. You see, with FIFA, they were making millions. But with Ultimate Team, they were making billions. Ultimate Team would consistently bring in record number profits on a yearly basis for EA. In 2021, EA would post a record high of 1.6 billion in revenue from Ultimate Team alone, making up 29% of its business that physical year. Those numbers do not lie. I'm not going to be the first to tell you, and there's probably many that will tell you that they hate Ultimate Team. They hate it with a passion, and they think Ultimate Team is basically the downfall of FIFA. I think it's also the downfall of EA. As they saw this huge thing make so much money, they tried to monetize every game that they had. Remember Battlefront 2? But this is something I have not much experience with. Now, for this video, I did actually jump into Ultimate Team for the very first time. I saw no interest in Ultimate Team. I never did. I hardly ever played FIFA online, so I never really jumped into Ultimate Team. But for this purpose of this video, I did play Ultimate Team for the first time. And I could see how people could get into it. I could see you getting players, making a team, getting the chemistry right, taking it online, and playing against people. It's a lot to get into because there's a lot that happens in the game when you first start. Like I said, I've never played it before, so jumping into the mode, I was greeted with you getting this card pack and this players and this thing. Granted, I'm playing on the PlayStation 4 for anyone that wants to know, and it is FIFA 22. But it was so overwhelming, and then eventually I made a team, took it online. There's various modes, there's squad modes, rivals, which leads into championships. There's playing against just friends. I know you can play co-op, but I didn't have time to choose to play co-op. It just was very weird. I kind of found myself loving it, getting into it, making the team, getting cards, and then getting the players. Now, I never spent any money in it. I just played it for about a day to see what it would be. And I got a little bit far. I played like 20 games. I think I won like 15 of them. The game plays a lot differently than it does when you play it like locally. I felt like the gameplay is completely different, and then you're playing online. So it was a bit more harder for me to figure out. But I can see why people get into it. It's kind of an addicting thing to play it. But the crazy thing is that this is a mode that only is successful for a year, because the very next year, it's totally pointless. All the money you spent within that year on FIFA, first buying the game, and then spending all this extra money to get coins and to buy these packs to get these players, you would then lose all of that within a year. The servers reset when the next FIFA game comes out. Heck, FIFA 22 and FIFA 23, right? FIFA 22's Ultimate Team is basically almost done, I believe, and then FIFA 23 comes out, so all the money you spent is totally pointless and useless. And the only reason you're doing this is to gain prestige or say, hey, I beat you, or things like that. I don't get it. I've never gotten online games. It's something I still do not get to this day, but I can see why Ultimate Team became what it is. And every single time they added in new cards, and every single time they changed Ultimate Team, many other modes got left behind. Ultimate Team was the big money maker, so EA focused everything on it. Focused on bringing in more players, focused in on making more systems, focused in on making it more intuitive, bringing more people that didn't play it to play it, you know? While that happened, the other modes got left behind. Be a Pro was introduced. That hardly got changed. The normal gameplay, they didn't really care about it. The fan favorite mode of career mode, yeah, that hardly ever got updated. Minuscule. I think there was one year where they literally said, we're not changing anything about career mode. Why would you? It's a fan favorite. It's one of my favorites. It's what got me into the franchise in the first place. And they hardly ever touch it. Even now at FIFA 23, when I've seen the trailers for it, I was like, I'm not impressed with what they're adding in. This is supposed to be the last FIFA game, and what you've added to career mode, it's something I've seen in other games 10 years ago. Unbelievable. Just unbelievable. But yes, Ultimate Team is, for me, I think, the turning point for EA and the franchise. It's when FIFA saw, this thing is making more money than we thought it did. This thing is making more money than what some of our competitions are making. And EA was taking bang home. And that's why I know Ultimate Team is going to follow in FIFA 23. It's going to be in FIFA 23. But it's going to follow them into the next year. Ultimate Team would become a blueprint for many companies to put into their games and monetize their systems. And you would think, even with all the pushback, Even with EA fighting various governments for how they trick people into spending money and not showing you probability and making sure that it isn't gambling, that the mode would fail. But no, consistently, yearly record profits for this mode alone. But with all the success that the franchise was having, there was nothing that could go wrong with the partnership, right? So, EA and FIFA were riding high with the franchise success. They've managed to take this very small, unassuming football game and build it into one of the greatest brands in the world that transcends not only gaming, but into the real sport itself. Many people became fans of football because of this game. Many people started playing football because of this game. Many people learned football because of this game. But on the surface, while these two companies were working really well with each other, behind the scenes it wasn't that easy. In 2021, we got reports that revealed that the relationship between both parties has kinda soured over the years. And with the contract negotiation coming up, it seemed that it wasn't going to be as simple as before. You see, the contract between the two companies was coming to an end after the Qatar World Cup, which is of course happening later this year. As both parties sat down to renegotiate, it seemed that they both had different ideas where to take the future of the franchise. The series generates billions of dollars, but FIFA doesn't see much of that. EA sees a lot. And that's mainly just due to the fact that the only thing EA really pays FIFA for is its name and the rights to use the World Cup for both women and men's. And because of that, FIFA was looking to get a little bit more money out of them. The normal pay was around $150 million over the 4 years. Now, FIFA wanted $1 billion over 4 years. Basically every World Cup cycle, which is something that EA doesn't really like. You see, because if you do it every World Cup cycle, it meant that they also couldn't take advantage of the World Cup, and maybe EA could cut ties with them at the peak of when the game would usually sell. This also gave FIFA a lot more control over renegotiations, any future contracts, and where the future of the franchise could go. And this shortening of a contract meant that EA could look for other developers during that time. Now, EA wasn't going to lie down. Now, it's not that EA didn't try. They actually made a very significant offer for 8 years of exclusivity across gaming and esports. But FIFA wasn't looking to lock all of that up with one publisher. After many months of negotiations breaking down, it would be FIFA that said they would launch their own title with third-party developers. Now, they have given a short extension to the contract to let EA Sports roll out 1 more year because, money is money. So, FIFA 23 is still coming out this year under both two companies, but that will be the last of it all. Now, for EA, this means that EA now gets a lot more freedom. Freedom to play around with the game. You see, EA was actually looking to change FIFA for a very long time, but there was a lot of restrictions placed on not only their own company, but FIFA themselves. Sticking to the simulation, they were looking to go more arcadey, create different modes, maybe have it be less realistic and more of an arcadey style game. And you could kind of see this. There are modes in FIFA that have been introduced much later that were like the no rules mode, or you could just tackle anyone, or offsides or off. Like, there are modes like that now in FIFA. And so you could see EA was trying to do something different, but FIFA kind of stopped them from doing a lot of that. And while EA could probably pay FIFA its money, they clearly don't want to cut the middleman anymore. And EA clearly sees that they are way bigger than the FIFA license at this moment. And it's true. When you speak FIFA, you also think immediately EA. When you say EA, you're like, oh, FIFA. It's the biggest two companies in the world, right? They're two separate companies, but you can hardly tell apart the brand of FIFA and EA. And because of the strong marketing, their strong experience, they can easily rebrand. So, the future of EA is this. Next year, 2023, EA will launch their new rebranded version of the game called EA Sports FC. And if you think that they don't have a leg to stand on, you're kinda wrong. You see, because EA itself has licenses with over 300 different teams, leagues, and national associations. And many of the top clubs and leagues have already decided to back EA. This means that by the time FIFA 23 ends and it releases, we could probably see next year March, EA, or even about maybe April or June, EA starts to push the new EA Sports. And they're going to market it like they always market it, right? Buzzwords, new gameplay modes, the realism, all the graphics, and Ultimate Team will probably follow the game mode as well. But what will we see is totally unknown. they could easily maintain the quality that they've created over the many years. And now, instead of it being FIFA on the front, we'll see in big, colorful letters, EA Sports FC. For FIFA, it's a lot tougher. You all know it's really hard to break into the video game industry. Many big companies have tried and many big companies have failed. I don't think there's any developer or publisher that can match what EA has done. Nor do I think there's any developer that could really match the quality of what EA has done with its franchise. Now, it's not to say that they can't find somebody. The only biggest one I think that still does sports titles is 2K. Codemasters has done F1 and WRC, but they've really only stayed in that bracket. While FIFA can easily use its name and official license, it doesn't mean it's going to be an easy road for them. I could clearly see them failing a lot before they get it right. But the one good thing is that we won't have just one football title a year anymore. We might have 2 or 3. Maybe there's a simulation one that's like FIFA, and then there's a arcadey one that's not like FIFA. It could be a fun time. While many people don't like FIFA nowadays, with the use of its monetization, with Ultimate Team, and with EA hardly really updating some people's best modes, such as, for one, Career Mode, or Manager Mode, which is one of my favorite modes, but they hardly do it. It just shows the power that EA has with the franchise, that even though people bash it constantly, the game still sells every single year in the millions. It's still at the top of the list of top selling games. No matter what you say, it's so powerful that they've basically cornered the market. No one else can make titles even anywhere near or remotely close to their quality. And it's due to their strong marketing and advertising that EA has done over the years that has allowed them to gain a foothold and a control over this entire football market. Because of that, no one even tries to challenge them. And there wasn't that there weren't challenges. Of course, the most notable being Konami's PES, who at the time was regarded as the better game franchise, with the better animations, with the better gameplay. It was at the time when FIFA was stale for many went to PES. And PES and Konami even took a little bit of that market share from EA. But when PES started to get very lax, that's when EA jumped in and EA produced some of their best titles. I know FIFA 10 is many favorites. FIFA 12 is one of my favorites. 14 and 15, there's a lot of good titles there. And at that point, EA wasn't the company they were today, where they're very money driven. They actually cared for a lot of their sports titles. They cared on making really good products. I haven't played Madden, but I know there are people that fondly talk about a certain Madden game. I know the Fight Night series is fun and super popular by many people. EA really did care for these titles, and the developers behind them did care. And of course that all changed when Ultimate Team rose up and it became a company filled with really caring for their titles into a more money-driven company. Monetizations in nearly every single game, to the point where they're getting in trouble in various countries because of how they use it and how predatory the system is. And whether you like that or not, it doesn't come to the fact that EA is still the biggest sports gaming publisher in the world. And this is because they know and they're experienced in it. But it doesn't mean that it's going to be a big change. This partnership is coming to an end, but we don't really know what the future holds. Well, we know that they're making a new title, and many of the big leagues and teams have already backed EA. But will we see change? Will we see change in Ultimate Team? I doubt it. Ultimate Team will probably still be there. Will we see change in gameplay? Will we see change in graphics? Will we see less simulation and more arcade? I can't tell you. I mean, the reason the breakup happened was because EA wanted to move from a more simulation base into a more arcade base. And maybe even have more than just one title a year, while also burgeoning and growing in the esports market. So I don't know what this new game holds. I do know it'll be top of the line quality with graphics. EA will market it with buzzwords and a whole new slogan with a soundtrack, because that's what they do. And now that they have full control over it, this could be either the best football game in, 8 years, or the worst football game. And even if it's bad, I still think people are going to jump on the bandwagon. They're going to jump on the train because they're going to be just as curious as everyone else is. What does this title mean? What does this title hold? But most importantly, for the genre of sports games and football games, what does it mean for the rest of the titles? Madden, the UFC titles, the PGA titles, hell, the NBA titles. Many of those are exclusives to various companies. And even Konami, who was EA's biggest competitor left the franchise and went to the eFootball League, which we can all say that game really needs some help. But it doesn't mean that there can't be new competitors rising up. With FIFA obviously losing the license and FIFA now getting freedom, they could jump around. They can create new titles, new opportunities for new developers and publishers. I don't think there's anyone on the level to compete with EA. Maybe only 2K, but will 2K be willing to work with FIFA? And not really any of the other titles in the sports are as successful as the NBA series, so who knows? But finally see a grapple hold of what EA has had on the football genre loosen up a bit. Maybe we could have actual fun games again. I know a lot of people love the FIFA Street titles. I love them too. I have so much fun with those FIFA Street titles. But a lot of what EA has done now has felt very corporate, especially in the later FIFA titles. And this shifting landscape is kind of what's been happening in the industry itself. So who knows? Maybe Madden will move companies, you know? That's a series that also needs to get a whole refresher. Maybe NBA and 2K will find something different to do. That's a series that has even worse monetization systems than a lot of what EA does. The question now becomes, how big of a change is this to EA? Are they willing to make an actual fun football game? Are they willing to be less corporate and more, as a publisher, fun? We've already seen them destroy a lot of their franchises because they were so money driven. But you can go back to many people's memories with all the titles from Madden and the NHL, some of the UFC games, Fight Night, and even the older FIFA titles. Many people have fond memories of those titles. They weren't just only a really good football game, but they were fun to play. The modes felt different. They fleshed out. It felt like a team of developers that really cared about football and just wanted to make a really fun, good game. And nowadays, it doesn't feel like that anymore. So I hope that even though this partnership is coming to an end, and it truly is an end of an era, like, I can't believe it is coming to an end, that we get something good out of this. Maybe this was the kick in the butt that EA needed. So I'm super excited. On the other hand, I'm not as excited for what FIFA's gonna do. I don't think they're gonna do really well. I mean, stranger things have happened in gaming, but FIFA has probably almost no leg to stand on. Many teams and leagues don't like FIFA in the first place. And they're just as a corrupt company and money-driven company as EA is. So, if they're looking to make some extra bucks and some extra cash in the market of gaming, it's not gonna be easy. Especially if they're going up against juggernauts like EA. Because if you go to a store right now and you see a weird football game with not even Messi's face on it, and you see EA Sports with probably Messi's face is going to be on there, or Mbappe, or Haaland, I would rather buy that one than I would buy that weird other football game. And not only that, because it has EA Sports. You hear it every single time you boot up the game. EA Sports. It's in the game. It's a brand, it's a company you trust when it comes to making a competent football game. And granted, I'm just saying that their games all function really well, and they all are somewhat different from one another, but that's the whole thing about it. It's this idea that now, when they have no restrictions, what does that mean? And what does EA without restrictions mean? There's only one thing we can do. We'll have to wait till next year, 2023, when they release EA Sports FC. And I'll tell you this, it might be the first title I've bought in a long time when it comes to FIFA. But I always know one thing. Ultimate Team will still be there in some form or another. And they'll still have their run-of-the-mill when it comes to monetization. But hey, if we get a fun game out of it, I'll take what I can get. So there it is. There's the video. I hope you guys liked it. This is my first time ever doing this, so I don't have the best equipment. So I just really wanted to talk about this because I have a lot of memories with FIFA. You know, I didn't always get into the series, but my cousin was a huge FIFA fan and I had a lot of memories playing with them. And he would give me the old FIFA and he would buy the new FIFA. So that's how I got into FIFA itself. But my favorite has to be like FIFA 10 and 12. Because 10 was the first one I ever bought myself. And then 12, I was just like, I was into that career mode. I couldn't get over it. I couldn't get over 12. It was like just such a big change. And you know, there's a lot of memories with FIFA. I know people that bought FIFA and play no other game. They bought the console just to play the game. And I know people, they don't even have a console. They don't even play FIFA. But they're really good at FIFA. So what is your funnest memories with FIFA? And what is your favorite one in the franchise? Comment down below.